So, I'm David Robbins, and I am a professor at Kent State University in the UXD program. And welcome to UX Connect, the speaker series coached by Kent State University's User Experience Design program and Information Architecture Institute. This should provide an open forum for ideas to be shared and discussed among professionals and students in user experience design. Presentations by past speakers, get information about the series, and propose a of your own at uxconnect.wordpress.com. You can at UXConnect, use the hashtag UXConnect. The format is offered. It's offered on the first and third Monday of each month from 1 until 1, excluding holidays. The way the speaker will present for 30 to 40 minutes, leaving the remainder of the hour to Q&A. And to pose your questions or post questions to everyone, and we'll save them up for the speaker wishes to address the question as it's asked. That's an option for the speaker. Today we have Whitney Quesenbery and called A Web for Everyone, Designing Wayfinding and Orientation We All Can Use. Fascination with people and an obsession I'm in trouble communicating clearly. Bringing user research insights to designing products where people have written 3 books on the topic. Storytelling for user experience, UX, design research in a connected world, and Web for Everyone. She's interested and passionate about civic design and the power of UX and democracy, and that's an important topic. She is co-2 influential Brennan Center's reports show just how much matters in elections. The Center for Civic Design, along with Dana Chisnell. I found this particularly interesting. She was a theatrical lighting designer on and off Broadway, learning from some of the masters. And I just saw my first Broadway show a couple of weeks ago. I saw in New York, and it was so critical in that. And so, before we get started, I want to remind you to use WebEx chat for questions and address your questions to everyone so everyone can see the question, and by the host to avoid random background noise. So with that, why don't we get started and turn it over to Whitney.
I think try to see if the magic of this works. Everyone, I have a little bit of a cough, and I will try not to cough directly into the microphone. But here, say it so everybody sees it before it goes away. This is a brand new book, just launched last Thursday. But with the resources, our guide, our principal designs, the persona about, and a collection of things on the rosenfeldmedia.com. So you can see there.
Slide. So let's make sure that.
Okay.
I'd have to click to share your desktop again. I'm not sure.
That would be a good thing to do, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's going to come up.
Yeah.
That's there coming up. There we go.
Perfect. Design and accessibility. I think that a lot of us start by thinking about rules, regulations, and compliance, and not do it and being afraid that we'll do it wrong. But I want a slightly different tack on this and think about all the things that were started out as things to help people with disabilities and have become part of everyday life. One is a pair of eyeglasses. Even eyeglasses are big and black and ugly, and now they're fashion devices, right? So we use design to make them something that not helps people like myself, but also I've made them something that's part of an everyday, just like you choose your clothing. Below the keyboard with the microphone lit up, Android and iOS and all the devices now do text, so it will actually annotate. All of those voice communications were also originally designed ways to help people who could not in the right. We have a line of OXO good grips. Again, a line that are just plain great kitchens. But what's special about them is their handles are designed for people who can't grip very well or can't grip small things. And we have a picture of a postal cart. It's a wheel cart, and you might disability that was for the disability of being female. The women wanted to be mail carriers, and they said, oh, you can't do it. It's being so heavy. Well, it invented the wheel, and it turns out that not only does that allow people who don't have to carry 50-pound sacks of mail on their back all day long, it's everyone, because it turns out that carrying that much weight isn't good for anyone's back, and so it enabled more people to be postal carriers, but it'll improve the health of those who are. Definition of disability: interaction, the outcome of the interaction between a person and the event or attitudinal barriers they face. This, until late century, the disability was a medical one, right? We defined it by how they functioned. And I love this new one. It's called the social model for disability, because it's disability that happens between you and who you interact with. UX designers, content people, we can do something about it. That means that we may have to remove disability, to not create disability, and to remove it entirely. That model to something how we create the world. What I think is hard about accessibility is the way things move at different paces. Introduced a concept called haste layering, where he thought the fact that things move like you're running a racetrack. The program have to move very fast, or do move very fast. And things that'll move very slowly. And labels as fashion, commerce, infrastructure, governance, or nature. We might think about what those things are when we think about accessibility. Text fast. Things are, especially these days, things are introduced all the time. Our move quickly, change habits, but not that easily. Changing work processes for a whole organization or a group of people, that changes more slowly. Under culture changes even more slowly. Laws and regulations take a long time to develop, and at the bottom still is the slowest. But so think about words we're going to write to. We might take to develop a new standard. We the up to Section 508 in 2006, 2007, and it's through the regulatory process. That's a slow process, but it's than it does to introduce a new technology to change a habit and so on. Right, the introduced in 1876, and not until the 80s when we started to get the fax machines, the first one, an IBM PC, Walkmans, and to cascade, because every year, decade, we've had more and more things happen. Glenn, one of my heroes, she's a writer, happens to have cerebral palsy, and says she's written 3 books with her left thumb, is that I feel like technology is finally catching up with what I truly need. I'm finally at a point where we can have technology and have digital devices on everyone. And I think there's to do it. That's the civic design part of it coming out, that we really have to make this happen. What is, well, how many people are really talking about? The answer is over 50 million adults. If you look at adults over 18 million have trouble seeing or don't see at all. 31 million have trouble hearing. Disability, that might be mobility or trouble grasping or handling small objects. And speak less than very well. This is from statistics from 2002. Number you added up, that's 17 to 20% of non-institutionalized adults. Right, so we're out in society, working, living, 20% of us. So if you live with 100 people, that's 20 with some kind of problem. And that this increase as we age, as a normal course of aging. We swell and we have dexterity problems. So you may think there anybody with disabilities in the audience, but there are, unless you have done actively exclude them. So when I think about whether it's usable and used, on the line it says bell for voter assistance. This is it says help stairs or a door you can't open. Someone will come out and help you vote. That's not having the same thing. On the other row, 3, 1, 2 are set up on stands where people can stand at a table where you could sit if you needed to, or you could wheelchair. That's actually the same experience with variation in to our needs and preferences. Is to make it possible for everyone to experience, right? To that are now part of daily life, like shopping online or booking airline tickets or reading as well as any else can. So, writing this book for everyone, principles that would not just the needs from the practical point of view, but with how we create new experience and what we think about. We have core principles. The first, their purpose, their structure, that we create that's easy, wayfinding that's helpful, clean, language that's plain, media accessible, and universal. I'm going to call them briefly. I'm going to spend a little more time on finding and so much because I think that's a particular IA audience. We're thinking about how to design to accomplish. I don't convince a UX audience that we should be starting from people in the needs and designing with them. What we're designing with a broad audience in mind. The full definition of accessibility in the ISO standards is that it is used for people with a broader range of capabilities. So imagine a site, and we might have 3 people in our audience. We have Leah, the writer, editor for a trade publication, Steve, an artist, and Maria, who's a community health worker. All might be people in that audience. Nothing about them, but we might go deeper and think about what kind of disabilities they might have. What is the range of their experience? So, for example, fibromyalgia, which is a connective tissue that makes you very severe fatigue and also random pain. So she has a special keyboard, and she sets keys so she can reduce the typing she has to do. She also can reduce the amount of typing. But her really wishes that people would understand how hard it can be for her to make it through a day. When we think about making interaction, we might be thinking about impatient people, but we might be thinking about people for whom the simple task of interacting with a computer is in fact difficult. Perhaps he's deaf, right? He's American Sign Language, but he can speak lips. He uses lots of technology tools. In the picture, him conducting a video chat using sign language. He's tools. He's actually a pretty skilled user. Prefer text, not surprising for a graphic artist. For someone who speaks ASL, is that spelled in the same way. So, of course, spelling can make searching difficult for him. And if one thing's on video, then not having captions is a problem. He relies on technologies like CART, which is computer-aided live transcriptions with captions, and video has really changed his life. He has a disability. The real truth is everyone else has a disability, because but so you know, for instance, that somebody on a website is deaf. There is probably no analytics that would tell you that. They're out though. Maria, a community health worker, she happens to be bilingual. She has Spanish language sites. Can you find them? She's a user, but she's not all that proficient. But she loves her smartphone. Like many Latinos, smartphone is her major computer. She has a she uses for work, for corporation work. Her computer, she's not much. It's mainly having the things that she can carry around. Well, what makes it accessible for her? Maybe translations, but it's just something as simple as things that are written in clear, straightforward English. It's easier for her to translate it in her head. Also, to make it better and easier for automatic translation sites to work. The simpler, the better those things work. In the book, they range from Trevor, who's a high school student with autism, to mother. If you think about the personas we just presented and how we think about them, these are people who are all online. They are people using the web. They are likely users to think. The issue about the digital divide and making sure that people come online. But writing a book about web design, where we started with the assumption that we wanted to think about who was ready in the audience. Again, don't think this is a surprise to anybody. Is clear purpose. That we start with understanding the purpose of the app and to do it. In 2009 started a movement that's called Mobile First. He said design for mobile first because it forces you to focus. The screen forces you to make this, and you can't just file some stuff on the screen. Put another feature on the side. When designed with a clear purpose, first of all, you have fewer features to cope with at the beginning, and you have to think about accessibility first as well. If you're thinking about mobile, you could be thinking about also screen readers, thinking about the range and variation of how people might use this app. Next one is important in the accessibility world because of the assistive technology that people use to access the web relies on reading the website, reading the code, the underlying code, and reading it in a different way. There are two versions of the version of WordPress. Now, different pictures, the words are different, but the of that site looks alike. In fact, if you look between the two of them, you might be able to tell one is the accessible version and which one isn't. And that's what makes it accessible happens under the covers. It's things like text and having headings properly. And tip to a guy named Accessible, all the folks working at WordPress to make it more accessible. So the author of, I think the first an accessible child theme that we've been using, but something that I think more we ought to do, which is instead of waiting for the product to be released, they've actually gotten in there and they're with the WordPress.org design team, with the themes team, and that themes are accessible. I'm not WordPress here because WordPress is the largest platform, exact number, but some gigantic percentage of all sites in the world are based on WordPress. So if the thing is kind of invisible, then it's for someone who doesn't know technical accessibility to make sure it's done right. But if the tips are already accessible, then the mistakes you can make is a lot lower. It's a big standard we're thinking about, and the big is WCAG. That's the authoring guidance, version 2.0. It's the 4 main principles. I just wanted to show you this map because I think it's a nice one from Stanford Interactive, if anybody is looking for something to hang on their wall. They're all technical, right? They're about how to make sure that the uncode and the content that's in the site is different for screen readers to specialized keyboards can access it. That I think might be very interesting to people working at A, and that metadata, accessibility metadata project. It was just this week that SEMA.org has adopted it. It is someone with a disability needs, and you want to find out an app or digital content will work for you. It would be nice if the app could just tell you by what features it has. So if you need audio description or you know you need captions, you can simply query and say, please, all of the, ebook captions or all of the video podcasts that are captioned. And it's been researched by a group named Benetech, and recently the URL is A11Y. That's A11Y is abbreviation for accessibility. A11Y metadata.org. Go to the specification to see the actual metadata tags. The next, easy interaction and making sure that everything works. About designing across devices for big screens, for small screens, for iOS, for Android. All technology is a device, right? A reader is simply another way of communicating text. Pictures. The top is a Braille reader. It's a refreshable Braille, so it's electronic, and it reads at a time. Specialized switch device, so that after not having to use the keys, it also can have minimal use of the hands. You can still hit it. Programs out there take this and enlarge it for people with vision up to 8 and 10 times. 3 images from an ITV Raman developed at Talking Dial, where the question interacts with a dial phone that's on a glass screen. And his point was to say, rather than tell me where the keyboard is, move the keyboard to me. So when you put your finger down on the screen, that's where the 5 is. Once you know where the 5 is on a dial pad, you can so 3, you put your finger down and move it up to the right. You put your finger and move it down 1, and that gets you to an 8. So action patterns and gestures as a way of making things interactive. I don't know if everybody knows this, but in all of the Apple operating systems, iOS and OS X, and also accessibility features are now into the core of the operating system. Joystick alternative to mouse for many, so that the screen is being read to you, keyboards, and Hyatt use iPad. And this is a place where the makes a difference. Because the things you can do with our iPad, which is what a $800 consumer product, used to be expensive custom products, which are 3 or 4, a couple of $1,000 products to function, and you can bring this down to a consumer technology that's small, light, and it's comparatively expensive. Work with the platforms. They're actually vast people's lives. When we're thinking, keyboard matters a lot, and it's because a lot of the assistive technology emulates a keyboard. The name of the pretty, I don't really want to pick on them. Headline article. It takes moving the whole band image that happens in this text and down through the name of the person. 31 keys later, if you simply did this linearly, you would base for drinking as much coffee as you like, the title of the article. Find that interaction more smooth, so you can just get to a page and encode what we do visually, which is the headline. Talk about easy interaction. The Excel features are built in or added on. The kiosks, the train station, although it's a screen and a keypad, they're all fully accessible through both headphones, and you can't click. Right in the center of the screen is a little white points down to a headset jack, and a keypad that lets you do on a keypad everything you can do on the screen. One is that a lot of I know who are very conscious of accessibility have noticed that keypad. It's just there. It's built. The alternative sitting there. It's available on it. The screen is of a Kindle that engineer has broken apart. Sister has palsy and can't use the tiny little keys on the Kindle, so he broke the Kindle, and because he was an engineer, built her new keypad. I don't do that to our devices, certainly one thing. But the point is that what if there was a way to connect a keypad, or if the button on the thing were large enough for people to use. So even to have an alternative device that there's a way to connect to these Wayfinding users. This could be a whole site working within a feature, going through steps in a task, or even finding your way around a page. Use self-explanatory signposts. The picture maps, and this is because the pictures that go along with Google Maps were considered as an accessible alternative to the visual map. And they've been refined since then. I imagine trying to use Google Maps to get around if I was printing it out without the turn-by-turn directions. So it's where that a screen access to the map all serves everyone. Being consistent. Carolyn Jarrett came up with the phrase, land on the same words. So if I click called printer overview or printer control, I want it's called printer control. And if I called on a link called remote control panel, I want a page that's called remote control panel. Gotten to where I was going. It's don't very high. I see lots of sites where the link and doesn't really tell you where you're going to guess at whether you got to the right place or not. It's a lot of time to do that kind of exploration if you're seeing the page in a linear way. Page, we want to help people within the page. The skin we did for a page for a section of the university website, and the page title to be question, right? Because when people came to the site with questions, we wanted to reflect those questions in the site. If you get the page by clicking a link in the left corner, and so you click on what and you end up on what can I learn here. The top of the possible answers. Good headings. We had a long version and a short version that we could use for any page links. We used key points, making them easy for people to scan through quickly, and we captions that caption of the but help understand why that picture was there, what's that picture showing. So both a text describing the picture, but also a caption giving us the point. Design the wireframe for a site, think about how this fits together so that we know who we are, can get as easily and quickly as possible. It's a standard called ARIA for accessible interaction application with HTML5 elements. Roles in HTML5 are called elements, but them to identify areas of the screen. More than this, but this is one of the things it does. For instance, identify the areas of the article. That if this is an article, they both name now, so we can an area that matches the HTML5 element that takes the main content of the page. Imagine navigate by you can do in VoiceOver and in all the other screen readers now, and you page with the 41 key presses, and you can take me to main right away. We can regions of the page, we can identify where the navigation is, and headers and footers, and identify things that are sort of related, so complementary information. People do it try to do visually, so that we are taking the presentation, the kind of content, how it's presented, and coded, and making them all work to provide navigation. Page with a banner at the top and a left and one column, but you might have really complex pages on a project that was going to be using this site as an interactive site, and it's a complicated enough page that we were having to do quick little transitions to tell people how to use it because it's very rich. It wasn't that hard, but getting into it was hard. How we were going to make this accessible. Some simple signposting. We did not have time to view the whole site in HTML5 and UAR area, so skip links. They're not, but they're a good solution, and we provide the 7 main places. Wanted to be able to see the phase of the challenge, to get the main content, the in the user comment section, the statistics have critical information. Relate is also very, very important to the activity, sharing activity, and so the challenge activity feed. So we call ideas. You could get the others, but the point was easy to jump to those places to read them quickly. Adding the template and anchors to those anchors. So a pretty complicated page, if it's designed clearly, can be broken down in a way that helps people navigate, and we can add this under the published code navigation. Talking about clean presentation and supports meaning, so very content level, thinking about how to down the elements in the design. The image is the target pharmacy label that was designed as gradually adopted by the target. Bottle of medicine. The most important things isn't obvious. I'm a guest here, but it has a name on it, and in fact, the background that color can replace. So that people in the house using medicine have colors identified. The name is a mistake. How to get and things I think about, cautions and things I need to do, and secondary. So making sure we are actually and important in the design. I got from Design for Democracy. Was thinking about, sorry about the typo, how we create landmarks. All capitals aren't as good. It's because when it's the same, when the landscape is flat and then differentiated, then and you think instead about a scape where lots of and different the whole is easier to navigate. Then the design side as well. If all the look exactly alike, how will you be able to tell where you are? The other design is about reducing clutter. Now, enough that tools that do it, one of the early ones was called Readability, that would strip away all the navigation and just show you the content. I've never heard the new tools. Code is that they cover the screen and hide everything but the words that you're thinking about to help you focus. That doesn't just means that sometimes think about what the task is at any moment and whether that clutter is useful for the user at that moment, and can we help reduce its visual impact. And just making colors that are legible. If you work color blindness, there's a lot of ways to test. What you have to do is to simply an image and look at it in grayscale. And it will likely work for people even with no color perception at all, but common forms of color blindness. The next thing, content that people can understand and use. I think who are working in the field being for granted, but the National Assessment in 2008, I think, 6. So you can see at different levels. So you read it below basic, and that's 14% of the United States have only concrete reading skills. They can sound out letters. They can read sentences. It's manage everyday tasks. So, go to the grocery store, read the labels on the box, read signs, but not complicated. At bulk, at 44%, you can consult reference material, you can fill in forms, but you should be able to do heavy interpretation through text, with things and comparing viewpoints or making inferences. Now that third one in this audience, somebody going to college, at the you are reading words but maybe not understanding what that sentence actually is telling you. There's a from TEDx London, Lisbon, called The Right to Understand, where she discovered plain language. And in her home country of Portugal, the number of people who read novel was very low. And that meant information to female. There was a understanding it. Just a great example. Which is a federal sets. And one of the things they worked on was a set of questions that would help someone do a self-assessment for their risk of colon cancer. Sites that have from and then give an answer. And the one that went first gave an answer that said, 63, 63% risk. And we asked people what that meant. And these were, and they were not illiterate people, but they interpret that in any meaningful way. On the screen, it's not site. This is just the simple part of the thing. But final results screen. Typical age, Europe is much below average. It said in simple English. It described what much below average means. It showed where your risk was. It showed possible risk. The reason we can't always get a risk to 0 in this case is because some things you can't change them. And what you can do to fix it. It showed things that you can do. It gave you 3 actionable items and 3 things that you were doing that were pretty good. And what they would do into this screen, they concrete actual things they could do. I might take an aspirin. I can take calcium sus. I should keep being physically active. In other words, forcing them to go look up a table and think about and ask their doctor, but actually what they needed to know to most of the information we just collected from them. We can look at reading styles and perceptions, visual, down. This said, how are we going to make this graph, which is the entire page, how are we going to make this graph accessible? And it was really simple. First, a head of the summary. What are we telling him? That more information means more money. We have a graph that sort of sums it. The vision is still there. It simply says graphical view of this and right to the tabular form. So if the visual center of the page, but the tabular information is there and if someone wants to see it. So and color well enough. These who are red, green, colorblind. A red and a blue. So enough that if you put it on a scale, the blue looks black and the red is kind of a medium gray. So we use colors to make them work as well. Yeah. The second to last one is accessible media. And this is a place where we have to start thinking about how we support all senses, and it's where we actually have to do a little bit of work. Roads, for example, are things that all senses, even overstate security. We have on it, and so in a country where you couldn't language, you could see that this was a stop sign. Do in content is using meaningful alternatives for visual information. It's called text. When you on the page, a short bit of text on it that describes the image. This image. For example, we might say fox. We might say fox. We might fox photographed at Statuette National Wildlife Refuge, or a more photographic-oriented site, we might say red standing alone on a pile of rocks and snap at the camera. The correct alt text is depend on the meaning of the image. I love this chart from for the image. If the image is simply decorative, we can ignore it entirely. You do what we call alt text. And when you tag and you in a blank, then you know to just ignore it. To action, you want to describe it. So what is this a picture of? If it's information, if it's due information that's already on the page, you can also do no alt text or so that someone knows what that is and that it's there. And then quick information, you can actually text or that description into the alt text. And if it's, you can link to a place where there's full description. That image on the screen. I like to think of it as being journalistic, right? It's just to decorate them. They go in newspapers to help make them easier. Multimedia want to have synchronized audio and video. You have a transcript, but synchronizing is better. This is a picture of a webcast where we had a vote of the speaker, we had his slides, and we had the transcript. What I love is actually click on the transcript and get to that part in the video, and everything synchronized up. It's to be hard. They're better. YouTube's doing it, Namara is doing it, now Universal Usability, and there are tools. There's some from the WGBH National Center for Accessible Media, and they're free to help you do options easier. How we can create delight, and I think this is a important one. We have time and media. So here is part of the screen a signable account because you have credentials, and then they mail you a card, and then you come back online and you download an app and you do things. And they have a week ago. And how can we anticipate those needs? If we can do service design, we can do anything else. We that in practice, it needs to be an integrated process. Two pictures to tell a couple of stories of a man in a wheelchair sitting in the middle of the street with a sign that says, "Cut the crap and cut the curbs." This that's not easy. Actually, demonstrations. People with wheelchairs named themselves to manhole covers in the middle of the street for the need for curb cuts. And yet, everyone now has them, and we think of them as part of their life. So, there aren't rewards at the end. But I think advocates, it's important to remember that there are challenges in getting people to change their habits and their attitudes and ways of thinking. Doing a use paper prototype. We're actually my colleagues did it. How to test for rapidly, and they chose paper prototyping. One active computer, and when you chose what you were going to tap on, they put the new screen up. Our ideas about our methods also change, and that we methods to make it easier for more people to participate, not just in the end products we create, but in creating them as well. One is a question. Design and research for extremes. We will design for the middle. Pictures from a project that I've been coordinating. What if we design a ballot for that was just simple yes, no question? Every step of the interaction could be done by choosing yes or no, and on to it, for the rest of things and touch. And they design and they keep the design that works well for low vision. Interact with. The other thing is we're using a joystick again for ballot. This was in response to how many clicks or it took to get through a ballot, and people with mobility or low pain thresholds, and what they use joysticks to maneuver their wheelchair. They're actually right because you can just push your muscles to put your hand in one direction or another. And they designed a joystick. Actually, did the electrical engineering to design a joystick that could be customized to the person very quickly and would work well with the ballot. Again, maybe that's a better choice for the universal input with touch instead of unless we collaborate. One of the on this project was we had a big workshops with 30 people doing a design thinking workshop. The thing with them wasn't the process of the workshop; it was that we had voting officials, and we have people with disabilities all working together. Several of those ideas went on to become funded. But to me, the benefit was at the end when we read the feedback forms. Who started this by saying, "I actually am a registered lobbyist," said that one of the things was that gave them a chance to get out of the echo chamber, to stop talking to people just like themselves, and not just talk to, but work with people who saw ways, and that it was a actually work together. That in their world, there's so much adversarial. They just have time to just sit together and work on them. We had sign language interpreters. We had people help with had people to not be able to express themselves in reading because they were skilled at drawing. And so we were kind of the hands for the group. We had groups of 8 working, and they did the visuals. You can be a superhero by a new perspective. And the best example of this is a woman named Amy Mullins, who is an athlete and also a paraphrase, uses 2 prosthetics. And she hides those legs, and she has dozens of pairs. There's some lovely TED Talks that are well worth listening to or watching. The one was designed for her by Alexander McQueen, and its legs are carved wooden with ornate carving on them. There's a sort of skirt and then a top that looks like an Amazon woman. I think of when you think of someone who uses athletic legs. We have perspective on the world. And with that, I can turn it open to questions and discussion.
Whitney, I'm real excited about this topic. And Bev, let's see there. I don't know if you can see the chat. Okay. Thank you for an interesting presentation. Very thoughtful. You mentioned that standards are important for A1Y. Expressions of W3C, MMI, and EMMA. Do you consider trailblazing, RE, A1Y, and do you have preference, RE code versus global English, simplified English, plain English, etc.? What about global Spanish, for example? How can you best strategize improving A111 in global complex systems?
That's a lot of questions. So while I'm a standards admirer, I'm not deep in the WCP standards, but I might talk about ARIA and why it's an important standard to me. It was the fastest adoption of any standard we've seen. It moves through the process quickly. It's moving into mainstream. And the important thing that's happening with it is that eventually we will disappear because it will all be absorbed into HTML5. Right? P. Faulkner from Pasiala Group have done amazing work being on the standards committee and make it built in, not added on. And that's the direction we need to be seeing. We need to be seeing standards that think about all ways that standard will be used, not designing for just one narrow case and then hoping that the rest of them can catch up. About language and simple English. There is a formal language called Simplified English that was developed by the aerospace industry. The challenge of having people with adaptation, which nor am I talking about some of the other systems that are designed to help people with cognitive disabilities. When you write in plain language or plain English or plain language, with the simple word suitable, in short, clear sentences without voice, speaking directly to the audience, that one happens is that people read it more easily, but it reads more easily. And in English, I think that's really important. Also, word count, because it's to add space to the page to make things easy. It may add count, but it doesn't add word count. And that's all kinds of things. We know young people read because they're impatient, and old people get stymied by long things because they read every word on the page. People who don't read well because they skip from in a paragraph or in a sentence, they just skip to the next one and then miss some important information. So, plain of my heartland of interest. I'm not really a technical person in that way. It's easier for all of us. Argument that plain language is dumbing down. We fix it at Institute around plain language for medical information. One of the worried about what doctors would look at this information, health professionals, and say, this is so haven't, you're not, you to the point where you're not serious anymore. And one took review files, and instead of that long, paragraph block with the semicolons, we put it, and they're nervous about what action would be because it doesn't look like a journal anymore. And they think, God, you invented the bullet. You say there were 4 trials, and now you're going to tell me what the results of those clinical trials are. Just bullet them, and then I can easily see that there's 4, and you're talking about which one, and I know the difference between them. I may read that journal article, but hurry, I have 15 minutes a patient. I have 10 minutes to read this article. Get the gist of it quickly, and where I want to delve in more deeply.
Yep. Follows that up. And do you mean pre-translation writing as in global English?
In plain language, make it easy to translate.
Okay. That's interesting. I have a quick question too. Well, it's not totally quick, and I'm going to break the rules by not writing it down, and only because I can. I had a student a couple 2 years ago who wrote a project case study where he worked as in a large accounting firm, and he's doing work on their on accessibility within their intranet, their company intranet. Their goal was to get AAA ratings out of W3C, right? And so but the case study was all about the sort of gradation of the goal from A down to we'll get whatever we can get in A and work with individual cases as needed because of the limitations presented by their system. And I think because I've done some work on looking at web standards and trying to get them right. And as soon as you use content management systems and you're not authoring them, you run into of those systems, and you've run into that yourself. And if you could comment on some of the problems that happen there.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, the kind of systems are designed like every big enterprise software, and they're not designed either for human beings to use or for human beings. And we need to do something that they do better. By thinking very hard about what they're doing wrong. But I'm back to your story about aiming for a AAA rating on WCAG. For those WCAG levels, there's level A, level AA, and level AAA. So I would say that if you meet level A, it's not meeting anything, right? So let's get the foot in the door. I would actually start by building from level A. Get of that is usually adding restrictions, like I might say that let's see, for example, that at level you've got transcription captions, but live broadcasts have live transcripts. Well, yes, themselves add just restrictions, but add rigor, I guess is a better word. Mm-hmm. But the first part, if we content that had good things in it, was well designed, and we have text on all the images, and we have tables used for tabular data and with proper coding, and not layout, those 4 things would go away to a whole site, and we had a way to skip over repeated text. There's your 5th thing. If far, you would cite use of technology. I think if you go up the levels is you're making it more easier to light to it. So, if I can having to read a transcript, if I have audio action, not just caption, so I'm describing action on the screen, not just describing the words. They might be a second step, and I think when we think about pace layering, right, we think which things can we do. Some things need to be by the coders, right? So when you write your template for your content management system, if you have a good structured manner, it doesn't matter how great the content is. But everyone in the organization to write a banner or a page. We need to teach, if you have a multi-authoring situation, you need to teach people how to do good content, and that they know how to do text and and forms. Actually, forms is the fifth one. Making sure that forms are correct. I it was the biggest accessible was a commerce site with widget. Buy a T-shirt, but you couldn't tell what you wanted it to be. So was right in their critical path. Which, or the 3 levels down in the head, there's some. I'd fix the form first, and then the webcast. But I'd fix things that stop people from doing the basic task first.
So the response to my question would be probably to start with what you can control most easily, which would be to get to the single A rating, and then build from there if you can.
Absolutely. And AAA isn't necessarily required. AAA includes a lot of things that you may never do. If you don't do live broadcasts, then you don't. That's not an issue. If you so some people are beginning to say maybe AAA ought to be is a pretty good thought and will solve many of the problems, and that it's more important to understand your users and the kind of tasks they're doing and solve the problems for them when you're past.
Right. So I have time for probably one more question, and Bev writes, what about controlled authoring system?
What's a control?
Yeah, if we could unmute Bev, maybe she could say that, and then.
Hi, it sounds like you were describing actually. It made me think of controlled authoring systems used to make web teams of authors working together. One that comes to mind is acrolinks, for example.
Mm-hmm. Question for me and kind of author, it really gets in the way. So that it's a well-designed controlled authoring that does the things you need to do, then some of the things it did also help with accessibility. Is have a way to put in alt text. What they do, a way to do it that is easy. Even on WordPress, when I look at the image, I can the hideous title, which we don't need. I can, and just with multiple text, but I can put in caption and I can put in my alt text. But not looking at the page visually, that I do or don't have alt text on that image. I have, there was a panel where I could write everything in, kind of put it in, and then back and write alt text together, or side panel the alt text for the image sort of near it, so that into what I'm thinking about how to make the accessibility features also visible to authors. How do we know how to use it? That we have a style guide for how to write. For example, you have a bio, you have a picture of the person and their name, and then you have the bio. What do we put on that picture of the person? Do we make it invisible? Do we show of John? Do we Smith? I said that was the same everywhere. I mean, so it's the same kind of write style guides that we want to make on everything else. We also want to have our accessibility features. I lost.
Hi. But thank you very much. That was wonderful.
So I want to thank you for a really good good presentation. I had been talking just now on thank you all for attending, and
I want to say one last thing. That Rose Media has given us a discount code, UX Connect, if you want to buy Webinar or the other books. I forget exactly how it is, but it's a pretty nice discount.
Hey, great! I'll pass that on to everybody. And Mike Romeo for facilitating this discussion, and Bev for funding to do so. And if out there has presentation at WordPress.com and put it. And next talk is Rhonda Rennie, third. I hope she's going to talk about instructional design and information architecture, which is something near and dear to my heart. All right, thank you everybody, and hope to continue this discussion at some other time.
Thank you.
Thank